family betrayal, stolen money, and a son-in-law's cruel words. This is my story of survival when trust became my biggest mistake. Hi, I'm Izzy, and before we go any further, I need you to freeze this moment with me. Close your eyes for just a second and put yourself here. You're standing outside your daughter's apartment door. Your hand is raised, ready to knock, but you hear voices inside. One of them is your son-in-law, and he's talking about you. That old hag doesn't even know half her money's already gone, he laughs. If her account was empty, how would she look? Probably the same, broke and pitiful. Your heart stops. Your knees weaken. The hallway starts spinning. That's where Loretta Delaney found herself 2 years ago. 67 years old, retired, alone, and listening to the man her daughter married mock everything she'd worked for her entire life. But here's the question that haunts this story. How did it get this far? How does a mother who sacrificed everything for her children end up standing in a cold hallway, realizing the people she loved most had been stealing from her for months? I'm about to take you through every painful, shocking, heartbreaking moment of Loretta's journey. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll never look at family loyalty the same way again. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Where are you right now? Are you at home, on your lunch break, driving? Because what happened to Loretta could happen to you. It could happen to your mother, your grandmother, your neighbor. And the scariest part? She never saw it coming. This isn't just a story about stolen money. This is about trust, weaponized. This is about a daughter caught between love and manipulation. This is about a predator who knew exactly how to exploit kindness. But most importantly, this is about the moment Loretta stopped being a victim and became a fighter. So stay with me, turn off distractions, because what you're about to hear will make you angry, it will break your heart, and it will remind you that sometimes the quietest people have the loudest roar. Let me take you back to where it all began, before the theft, before the betrayal, before Loretta learned that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Let me show you who she was before everything fell apart. My name is Loretta Delaney, and if you had asked me 5 years ago what my biggest fear was, I would have told you losing my health or my home. Never in a million years would I have said losing my daughter. I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. Married my high school sweetheart, Marcus, when I was 22. We had 2 beautiful children, Charles and Janira. Life wasn't easy, but it was ours. We had Sunday dinners, backyard barbecues, and a mortgage we were proud to pay every month. Then, Marcus died. Heart attack. He was only 41. One day he was here, kissing me goodbye before work. The next day, I was planning his funeral. I became a widow with 2 kids under 10 and a stack of bills I didn't know how to pay. But I didn't have time to fall apart. My babies needed me. So I got a job driving a school bus. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. And more importantly, the schedule meant I could be home when my kids got out of school. For 28 years, I drove that bus through rain, snow, summer heat. I picked up other people's children, made sure they got home safe, and then I went home to take care of my own. I worked every overtime shift I could. I skipped vacations. I wore the same winter coat for 7 years because new boots for Janira mattered more. I did what mothers do. I sacrificed quietly and expected nothing in return. By the time I retired at 64, I had a small pension, $1,600 a month. Not much, but enough. I also had a little savings, about $12,000 that I'd managed to scrape together from years of being careful. That money was my safety net, my just-in-case fund, my peace of mind. I thought I'd done everything right. I'd raised good kids, kept a roof over their heads, taught them right from wrong. Charles moved to North Carolina for work, and we talked every few weeks. He was doing fine. But Janira, she stayed close. And for years, that made me so happy.
I thought it meant we had the kind of bond that distance couldn't break. Then she met Trenton. I remember the day she told me she was seeing someone. Her whole face lit up. She talked about him like he was the answer to everything she'd been waiting for. Confident, charming, ambitious. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But when I finally met him, something in my chest tightened. It wasn't anything he said at first. It was the way he looked at me, like he was measuring me, calculating, figuring out what I was worth. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just an overprotective mother who didn't think anyone was good enough for her baby girl. I wish I'd trusted that instinct, because 6 months later, they were engaged. And a year after that, my entire life started crumbling.
The first time Trenton came to my house, I knew something was wrong. Janira had warned me he was coming, so I cleaned the whole place. I baked a peach cobbler, his favorite, she'd said. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted him to see that my daughter came from a loving home. When they walked in, Janira hugged me tight, but Trenton, he barely looked at me. I extended my hand to shake his. He glanced at it, then walked past me and dropped onto my recliner, the one I had had for 15 years, without even taking off his shoes. "Nice spot you got here, Miss Delaney," he said, stretching his legs wide. "Real cozy for someone your age." I felt my jaw tighten. Someone your age, like I was ancient, like I was already halfway to the grave. Janira laughed nervously. "Trenton, don't be rude." He smiled at her. "I'm not. I'm just saying it's impressive. Not everyone her age can keep up a house like this." I forced the smile and went to the kitchen to get the cobbler. My hands were shaking, but I didn't know why. He hadn't done anything terrible. He was just off. Over the next few months, I saw more and more, and every time he asked questions. "Miss Delaney, you get a pension, right? How much do bus drivers make when they retire? You've got savings, don't you? You seem real stable. Ever think about getting someone to help manage your money, make it grow?" I brushed it off, told myself he was just making conversation. But deep down, I knew he wasn't asking because he cared. He was studying me. Then 2 years after their wedding, everything changed. Trenton lost his job. At least, that's what Janira told me. He said it was office politics, that his boss had it out for him, that the whole company was corrupt. But I later found out he'd been fired for stealing company equipment, office supplies, electronics, anything he could get his hands on. Janira didn't tell me that part. She hid it from me because she didn't want me to think badly of him. After he lost his job, he started showing up at my house more often, sometimes alone. He'd eat my groceries, use my internet, sit on my couch for hours watching TV. One day, he asked if he could borrow $50 for gas. I gave it to him. A week later, he needed $100 for a phone bill. I gave it to him. Then Janira called me crying. She was pregnant, and they were drowning. Rent was 2 months behind. Doctor appointments were expensive. They didn't have health insurance. She sounded so scared, so desperate, that I didn't even hesitate. "How much do you need, baby?" "Just maybe 500, just until Trenton gets back on his feet." I sent the money that same day. But 500 turned into 700, then 1,000, then another 500 because the baby needed things and they couldn't afford it. I kept a list in my notebook. Every dollar I gave them, I wrote it down. Not because I planned to ask it back. I didn't. But because I needed to see it. I needed to know where my money was going. By the end of the year, I'd given them $5,000. And Trenton never said thank you. Not once. Instead, he started acting like I owed him, like I was supposed to support them, like it was my responsibility because I was Janira's mother. One day, he showed up at my door unannounced. "Miss Delaney, you got any more you can help us with? Janira's stressed, and stress isn't good for the baby." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw no shame, no guilt, just entitlement. "I've already given you everything I can," I said quietly. He smirked. "Come on, you're sitting on a pension and savings. You're not using it."
That comment hit me like a slap, but I still didn't see what was coming. I thought the worst he could do was ask for more money. I had no idea he'd already started taking it. It was a Tuesday morning in July when my world stopped. I just finished breakfast, oatmeal and coffee, and I decided to check my bank account on my phone. I didn't do it often, maybe once a month. I wasn't the type to obsess over my balance because I knew what was there. I was careful. I budgeted. I didn't spend recklessly. But that morning, something told me to look. I opened the app, waited for it to load, and then I saw the number. My savings account balance, $3,800. I blinked, refreshed the screen, thought maybe the app was glitching. But the number stayed the same, $3,800. It should have been $12,000. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I scrolled through the transaction history and saw it. A single transfer. $8,200. Transferred out 6 days ago. I didn't authorize that. I didn't transfer it. I didn't even know you could transfer that much at once without being in the bank. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt too tight. My vision blurred. I gripped the kitchen counter to steady myself because my legs were about to give out. Somebody had stolen from me. Somebody had gotten into my account and drained almost everything I had. The first person I called was Janira. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely press her name. The phone rang 3 times, 4 times, and I was about to hang up when she finally answered. "Hey, Ma, what's up?" Her voice was casual, light, like nothing was wrong. I couldn't even get the words out at first. "Janira, baby, something happened. Someone took money from my account. A lot of money." Silence. "Janira? Ma, what are you talking about?" "My savings. $8,200 is gone. I didn't take it out. Somebody transferred it and I don't know how." More silence. Longer this time. And in that silence, I felt my stomach drop. "Janira, do you know anything about this?" "Ma, Her voice cracked. "Please don't be mad." Those 5 words confirmed everything. "Put Trenton on the phone," I said. "Ma, wait." "Put him on the phone." I heard muffled voices, then his voice came through, smooth and unbothered. "Miss Delaney, what's going on?" "You know exactly what's going on," I said, my voice shaking. "You took my money." He laughed, actually laughed. "Relax, you're retired. What do you need all that money sitting there for anyway?" I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My entire body went cold. "You stole from me." "Borrowed," he corrected, like it was nothing. "You'll be fine. You still got your pension coming in every month, right?" I was so shocked I couldn't even respond. This man who'd eaten at my table, slept under my daughter's roof, who I'd given thousands of dollars to, had stolen from me and felt no shame. And then he said the words that broke me. "Old hag, if your account was empty, how would you look?" His voice was cold, mocking, probably the same, broke and pitiful. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, staring at nothing. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. I tried calling Janira back 5 times, 10 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. She'd blocked my number. My own daughter had blocked me. I sat on my couch in the dark that night, staring at my phone, replaying that conversation over and over. The way Trenton laughed, the way Janira stayed silent, the way they both made me feel like I was the problem for even bringing it up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive over to their apartment and bang on the door until they opened it. But what would that do? They'd already made it clear. They didn't care. The next morning, I got dressed and drove to their place anyway. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Harder. Janira, I know you're in there. Please, we need to talk. Nothing. I stood there for 10 minutes, knocking, calling her name. A neighbor opened their door and stared at me like I was crazy. I left before someone called the cops. That's when the loneliness really set in. I couldn't tell Charles. He lived hours away, and I didn't want to burden him with this mess. I couldn't tell my friends at church because I was too ashamed. How do you admit that your own family stole from you? That your daughter chose a thief over her mother? I felt humiliated, small, stupid. The worst part? Janira was 8 months pregnant. I'd been so excited to meet my grandbaby. I'd already bought clothes, a crib, little blankets with ducks on them. I thought I'd be there for the birth. I thought I'd get to hold her and tell Janira how proud I was. But now, I wasn't even allowed to call her. Weeks passed. I barely left the house. I stopped going to church because I couldn't stand the thought of people asking how I was doing. I couldn't fake a smile anymore. One evening, I was sitting on my porch steps, crying as quietly as I could so the neighbors wouldn't hear. That's when Miss Ruthie walked by. Miss Ruthie was 73, lived 3 houses down, and had known me for years. She was one of those women who saw everything and said little, but when she spoke, you listened. She stopped in front of me, looked down with those sharp eyes, and shook her head. "Baby, you carrying something heavy." I wiped my face quickly. "I'm fine, Miss Ruthie." "No, you're not." She sat down beside me, her old knees cracking as she lowered herself onto the step. "You've been sitting out here crying for weeks now, and I've been minding my business, but I can't anymore." I didn't say anything. She put her hand on my shoulder. "Secrets can drown you if you let 'em. Whatever's eating you up inside, you need to let it out before it kills you." Something about the way she said it broke me open. I told her everything. About Trenton, about the money, about Janira blocking me, about feeling like I'd lost my daughter. Miss Ruthie listened without interrupting. When she finished, she nodded slowly. "That man is a devil, and your daughter's been caught in his trap. But you're not helpless, Loretta. You're hurt, but you're not helpless." "What am I supposed to do? She won't even talk to me." Miss Ruthie looked me dead in the eye. "Stop crying and start fighting. That man took your money because he thought you were weak. Prove him wrong." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit on my porch and cry anymore. I wasn't going to let Trenton get away with this, and I wasn't going to lose my daughter without a fight. I didn't know where to start, but I knew one thing for sure. If Trenton thought I was just some old woman he could steal from and forget about, he was dead wrong. I was going to find out exactly who he was, and I was going to make sure everyone else knew too. I started digging the next morning. I didn't have much to go on. Just his name, the fact that he'd worked at some logistics company, and a few things Janira had mentioned over the years. But I've learned that people always leave a trail. You just have to know where to look. First, I went to the logistics company where Trenton used to work. It was a small warehouse on the east side of town. I walked in and asked to speak to the manager. The woman at the front desk looked me up and down. "Can I ask what this is about?" "I'm trying to get some information about a former employee, Trenton Ward." Her face changed immediately. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned in close. "You family?" "Something like that." She lowered her voice. "He was fired 8 months ago, caught stealing equipment, laptops, tools, anything he could sell. The boss was going to press charges, but Trenton quit before they could file the report." My stomach turned. So it was true. He was a thief. Do you know if he's done this before? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know for sure, but one of the guys here said Trenton bragged about pulling stuff like this at his last job, too. I thanked her and left, my mind racing. Next, I tracked down his old landlord. It took some effort, but I found the address of the apartment complex where Trenton lived before he moved in with Janira. The landlord was an older man who remembered him immediately. Trenton Ward? Yeah, I remember him. Evicted him 2 years ago. Stopped paying rent after 3 months, trashed the place, and skipped town without paying what he owed. Did he do anything else? I asked. The landlord frowned. You mean besides being a liar and a deadbeat? He tried to use a fake pay stub to get the apartment in the first place. I didn't catch it until later. Fake documents? Theft? Evictions? This wasn't just bad luck. This was a pattern. I kept digging. I talked to people at a corner store he used to frequent. The owner told me Trenton had been banned for trying to return stolen merchandise for cash. I found a woman who used to work with him at another job. She said he'd been fired for using someone else's credit card to make purchases. Every conversation I had painted the same picture. Trenton Ward was a con artist, a manipulator, a predator who moved from victim to victim, taking what he could and disappearing before anyone could hold him accountable. And then I found the worst part. I met a woman named Carol at a diner. She was in her 60s, looked tired, and when I mentioned Trenton's name, her whole face went pale. You know him? She asked. He's married to my daughter. Carol closed her eyes and shook her head. I'm so sorry. Why? What did he do to you? She hesitated, then spoke quietly. I'm his mother. My heart stopped. She continued. 5 years ago, Trenton drained my bank account, took every dollar I had saved, about $15,000, told me he needed it for a business investment. I believed him because he's my son. But he didn't invest it. He spent it. And when I confronted him, he laughed in my face and told me I was too old to need it anyway. I felt sick. Did you ever get it back? I asked. She shook her head. No, and I haven't spoken to him since. He doesn't even know I moved. I had to start over completely. I sat there staring at this broken woman and realized something that made my blood run cold. Trenton didn't just steal from me because he was desperate. He stole from me because that's who he is. He's done it before. He'll do it again. And my daughter had no idea she was living with a monster. But now I knew the truth, and I had proof. The question was, what was I going to do with it?
I knew Trenton was a thief. I knew he'd done this before. But I still needed to understand exactly how he'd gotten into my account. So I went to my bank. I walked in on a Thursday morning and asked to speak to someone about a fraudulent transfer. The woman at the desk, her name tag said Linda, led me to a small office in the back. "What can I help you with today, Miss Delaney?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the transaction. This transfer, I didn't authorize it. Someone took $8,200 from my savings without my permission. Linda looked at the screen, then typed something into her computer. Her face was calm, professional. "Let me pull up your account history." She clicked through a few screens, her eyes scanning the information. Then she stopped. "Miss Delaney, according to our records, this transfer was made to a joint account, one that has your name on it." I blinked. A joint account? I don't have a joint account with anyone." She turned the monitor toward me. "It says here you opened this account 3 months ago. Joint ownership with—" She paused. "Janira Ward." My daughter's name. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. "That's not possible," I whispered. "I never opened a joint account. I've never even talked about opening one." Her expression shifted. She could see I was serious. "Miss Delaney, when you open a joint account, both parties have to sign. Let me pull up the signature on file." She clicked a few more times, and then an image appeared on the screen. A signature card. 2 signatures. The first one was supposed to be mine. I stared at it. The loops were wrong. The slant was off. The way the L connected to the rest of my name, it wasn't how I wrote it. "That's not my signature," I said, my voice shaking. "Someone forged it." She leaned closer, studying the screen. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I've been signing my name the same way for 67 years. That's not it." She looked uncomfortable now. "And the second signature?" I looked at the second name on the card. Janira Ward. Her signature was real. I recognized it immediately. The way she looped her J, the way her letters slanted to the right, I'd seen her handwriting 1,000 times. My daughter had signed this. My daughter knew. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the chest. It wasn't just Trenton, it was both of them. Janira had sat across from me at dinner, hugged me goodbye, called me on the phone, all while helping him steal from me. Linda was saying something, but I couldn't hear her. My ears were ringing, my vision blurred. "Miss Delaney," Linda's voice cut through, "are you okay?" I wasn't okay. I would never be okay again. But I forced myself to focus. What do I need to do to prove this signature isn't mine? She pulled out a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. "Sign your name here. We'll compare it to the one on file." I signed. My hand was shaking, but I did it. She held the 2 signatures side by side. Even I could see the difference. The forged one was clumsy, hesitant. Mine was smooth, confident. Her face went serious. "Miss Delaney, this is identity fraud. You need to file a police report." "Will I get my money back?" She hesitated. "That depends. If the investigation proves fraud, yes. But if the other account holder claims you gave verbal permission, it gets complicated." I felt my stomach drop. What if she lies? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I left the bank with copies of everything: the forged signature, the account details, the transfer records. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not because of the money, not even because of Trenton, but because my daughter, my baby girl, the one I raised alone, the one I sacrificed everything for, had looked me in the eye and lied to me for months. She'd helped him. She knew what he was doing, and she'd helped him do it. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive her for that, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wiped my face, started the car, and drove straight to the police station. It was time to stop crying and start fighting.
I didn't go to the police station that day. I wanted to, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the last thread of hope I had left, The part of me that still believed my daughter could be saved. That maybe, just maybe, if I confronted her one more time, she'd see what Trenton really was. So I drove to their apartment instead. It was late afternoon. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I climbed the stairs to their unit, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. "Janira, I know you're in there." I heard movement inside, footsteps. Then the door swung open. Trenton stood there, shirtless, holding a beer. He looked at me like I was an annoying fly he couldn't swat away. "Oh, look," he said, smirking. "The old hag finally crawled out of her house." I didn't flinch. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times. I wasn't going to let him rattle me. "Where's my daughter?" I said cold. He took a sip of his beer, blocking the doorway. "She doesn't want to see you." "Let her tell me that herself." He laughed. "Man, you really don't get it, do you? Janira's done with you. You're too much drama." I felt my hands curl into fists, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm not leaving until I talk to her." From inside the apartment, I heard Janira's voice, small, scared. "Ma, please, just go." My heart broke all over again. "Janira, baby, I need to talk to you. Please." Trenton rolled his eyes. "She said leave. You deaf or just stupid?" I ignored him and raised my voice. "Janira, I went to the bank. I know about the joint account. I know what you did." Silence. Trenton's jaw faded just a little. I pulled the papers from my purse, the ones Linda had printed for me, and held them up. "I have proof. The signature on that account, it's not mine. It's forged. And your name is on it too." Trenton's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I stepped closer, staring him down. "I also know about your past, Trenton. The theft charges, the evictions, the fraud. I talked to your old landlord, your old boss, even your mother." His face went pale. "That's right," I continued. "Send her regards. She told me everything, how you stole from her, how you abandoned her, how you do this to everyone who trusts you." For the first time since I'd met him, Trenton looked rattled. "You're lying," he said, but his voice wavered. "Try me." I held up my phone. "I have statements, witnesses, documents, and if you don't return every single dollar you took from me, I'm going to the police tonight. I already talked to a detective. They're waiting for my call." That last part was a lie, but he didn't know that. Trenton's hands started to shake. He set the beer down on the floor and crossed his arms, trying to look tough, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "You wouldn't do that to your own daughter." I looked past him, into the apartment. Janira was standing in the hallway, one hand on her belly, tears streaming down her face. "Janira," I said, my voice breaking, "please, tell me the truth. Did you know what he was doing?" She didn't answer first, just stood there, crying. Trenton snapped at her. "Don't say anything, Janira. She's bluffing." But Janira wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. And in that moment, I saw something shift in her eyes. "He made me," she whispered. Trenton spun around. "Shut up, Janira." "He made me," she screamed, louder this time. "He told me if I didn't help him, he'd leave me. He said we'd lose the apartment, lose everything. I was scared, Ma. I didn't know what to do." Trenton's face twisted with rage. "You stupid—" "Don't you dare," I said, stepping between them. "Don't you dare talk to her like that." Trenton looked at me, then at Janira, and I saw the moment he realized he'd lost control. Janira was still crying, but now her voice was stronger. "You used me. You used both of us. And I was so stupid I let you." "Janira, baby, we can fix this," Trenton said, his voice suddenly soft, manipulative. "Your mom's just upset. We'll pay her back. We'll figure it out." But Janira shook her head. "No, I'm done." She looked at me, her face red and swollen from crying. Ma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have stopped him. I wanted to hug her. I wanted her to tell her it was okay. But it wasn't okay. Not yet. You're going to pay me back, I said firmly. Every dollar. And you're going to help me make sure he never does this to anyone else again. Janira nodded, tears still falling. I will, I promise. Trenton's face went from pale to red. You're both insane. You think you can just... Get out, Janira said suddenly. Trenton stared at her. What? Get out of my apartment. Now. For a moment, I thought he might hit her, but instead he grabbed his jacket and stormed past me, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Janira collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, and for the first time in months, I sat down next to my daughter and held her.
2 weeks later, Trenton was arrested. It wasn't even because of me. Turns out, while he was busy stealing from my account, he'd also been running a credit card scam in another county. Someone filed charges, and when the police ran his information, they found warrants. Multiple warrants. Janira called me the night it happened. Her voice was shaky, but relieved. Ma, they got him. He's in jail. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Are you okay? I asked. I'm 9 months pregnant and alone, she said quietly. But yeah, I'm better than I was. 3 days later, Janira went into labor. She called me from the hospital and I dropped everything and drove straight there. When I walked into that delivery room and saw her lying in that bed, hooked up to machines, scared and exhausted, all the anger I'd been holding on to just melted away. She was still my baby, and she needed me. I held her hand through every contraction. I wiped her forehead with a cool cloth. I told her she was strong, that she could do this, that I wasn't going anywhere. When my granddaughter was born, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a head full of dark hair, I cried so hard I couldn't see. Janira named her Grace. A week later, Janira came home from the hospital, but she didn't go back to the apartment she'd shared with Trenton. She came to my house. She stood on my porch, holding Grace in one arm and a diaper bag in the other, and looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Ma, I don't have anywhere else to go. I didn't say anything. I just opened the door wider and let her in. That first night, we didn't talk much. She was exhausted, and Grace cried every 2 hours. But the next morning, over coffee, Janira handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a cashier's check for $8,200. I stared at it, then at her. "Where did you get this?" "I sold everything," she said quietly. "The furniture, the TV, my jewelry, my car. I took out a loan. I did whatever I had to do to pay you back." My throat tightened. "Janira," she said, "I know it doesn't fix what I did, but it's a start, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I set the check down and pulled her into my arms. We both cried, ugly, loud, painful sobs. "I forgive you, but you don't ever let a man come between us again." She nodded against my shoulder. "I won't. I promise." The first few weeks were hard. Janira was adjusting to being a new mother, and I was adjusting to having a baby in the house again. Grace cried at all hours. The house smelled like diapers and formula. Neither of us was getting much sleep. But slowly we found a rhythm. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find Janira rocking Grace in the living room, humming the same lullaby I used to sing to her when she was a baby. Sometimes I'd sit with her, and we'd talk, really talk. She told me everything. How Trenton had isolated her from her friends, how he'd made her feel like she couldn't survive without him, how he convinced her that taking my money wasn't stealing, it was borrowing from family. "I knew it was wrong, Ma.
she said one night, her voice thick with guilt. But I was so scared of losing him that I convinced myself it was okay. I listened without interrupting. I needed to understand how it had gotten this far. He made me feel like I was nothing without him, like I was lucky he even stayed with me. And when I got pregnant, it got worse. He said if I didn't help him, he'd leave me and the baby. My heart broke for her, not because I excused what she'd done. I didn't. But because I understood how manipulation works, how abusers break you down piece by piece until you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You're stronger than you think, I told her. You proved that when you kicked him out. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. I should have done it sooner. Maybe, but you did it. That's what matters. Over the next few months, Janira started putting her life back together. She got a job at a local grocery store. It wasn't much, but it was something. She started saving money. She went to therapy, something I encouraged because I knew she needed help processing everything she'd been through. And slowly, I started to trust her again. It didn't happen overnight. There were moments when I'd catch myself checking my bank account more often than usual, just to make sure everything was still there. There were nights when I'd lie awake wondering if she really changed, or if she was just saying what I wanted to hear. But then I'd see her with Grace. The way she held her, the way she looked at her with so much love it made my chest ache. And I'd remember that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define you forever. One evening, we were sitting on the porch together, watching Grace play with a stuffed bunny on a blanket. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. "Ma," Janira said quietly. "Thank you." I looked at her. For what? For not giving up on me, for letting me come home, for forgiving me when I didn't deserve it. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're my daughter. I'll always fight for you, even when you're fighting against yourself." She smiled through her tears. "I'm gonna make you proud. I promise." "You already do. Every single day." A few months later, we got news that Trenton had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and identity theft. Janira didn't cry when she heard. She just nodded and said, "Good." That night, she stood in front of the mirror in her old bedroom, holding Grace on her hip, and looked at herself for a long time. "What are you thinking about?" I asked from the doorway. She turned to me, and for the first time in years, I saw clarity in her eyes. Strength. "I'm thinking about how close I came to losing everything, how close I came to losing you." She kissed Grace's forehead. "I'm never letting anyone make me feel that small again." I walked over and wrapped my arms around both of them. "You're not small, baby. You never were. You just forgot for a little while." And standing there, holding my daughter and my granddaughter, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward anyway.
If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd be sitting here today, holding my granddaughter while my daughter cooked dinner in my kitchen, I wouldn't have believed them. There were days I thought I'd lost Yanira forever, days I thought the betrayal was too deep to ever heal from. But here we are. Yanira's been living with me for over a year now. She's got a steady job, she's saving money, and she's looking at apartments for her and Grace. I told her there's no rush, that they can stay as long as they need to, because that's what family does. Real family. Not the kind that steals from you.
Not the kind that uses your love as a weapon, but the kind that shows up, that fights for each other, that forgives even when it's hard. I learned a lot from this experience. I learned that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. I learned that silence isn't weakness. It's sometimes the calm before you find your strength. But most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're protecting not just yourself, but everyone around you. If I hadn't confronted Trenton, Yanira might still be trapped in that relationship. Grace might have grown up watching her mother be manipulated and controlled, and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering why I didn't fight back. So if you're listening to this and you're in a situation where someone, family or not, is taking advantage of you, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not obligated to suffer in silence. You are not weak for setting boundaries. And you are not a bad person for protecting what you've worked your whole life for. Sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us the deepest. But that doesn't mean we stop loving them. It just means we love ourselves enough to say this stops now. Grace is 2 years old now. She calls me Mimi. And every time she runs into my arms, every time she laughs at something silly I do, I'm reminded that standing up for myself saved more than just my bank account. It saved my family. And that's worth more than any amount of money in the world. My name is Loretta Delaney, and this is my story of survival, forgiveness, and the day I finally found my roar.